The sun dipped low behind the jagged peaks, casting long shadows across the barren plains where the winter wind howled like a restless ghost. The chill was unforgiving, biting through thick coats, numbing fingers, and threatening to steal the warmth from even the strongest souls. John Callahan, a grizzled cowboy with years etched deep into his weathered face, guided his horse slowly through the snow-packed trail. His breath came out in heavy clouds, mixing with the cold air that bit at his cheeks. He'd been following the river's course for days, searching for signs of game, and a safe place to rest before the night fell entirely. The unforgiving wilderness was no stranger to him, but this winter felt harsher than any he'd faced before. As he reached a small clearing near the edge of a sparse forest, John spotted movement, something dark against the white canvas of snow. Curious and cautious, he urged his horse closer. There, crouched by a thin fire, struggling to hold against the wind, was a woman, her dark hair tangled and frozen at the edges, her worn clothing barely shielding her from the cold. She looked up, eyes wide and desperate. "Please, don't leave me out in the cold," she said, voice trembling. "I'll keep you warm every night if you take me in." John's instincts screamed caution. Strangers were rarely a blessing out here, especially when the frontier was rife with danger, but something in her mixture of fear, hope, and unwavering determination softened his resolve. He dismounted and approached slowly, wary but drawn by the vulnerability before him. "What's your name?" he asked, kneeling beside her. "Ioka," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Apache." John nodded. "You're lucky I found you. This cold won't wait." She shivered violently as he helped her to her feet. "Please, just for tonight," she pleaded. John glanced toward his modest cabin a few miles back, a humble shelter from the biting cold. "All right," he said finally. "Come with me, but we'll need to stay alert." As they rode toward the cabin, the silence between them was heavy with unspoken stories and the promise of survival. The winter was merciless, but maybe, just maybe, together they could face it. The cabin was small and weather-worn, nestled among towering pines that whispered softly in the cold wind. Smoke curled from the stone chimney, promising warmth and safety amid the frozen wasteland outside. John led Ioka inside, closing the heavy door against the biting cold. The warmth from the hearth immediately wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. Ioka sighed, relief flooding her features. John moved to stoke the fire, and as the flames leaped higher, he offered her a blanket. She wrapped it tightly around herself, still shivering but slowly thawing in the heat. "I don't know how you survived out there," John muttered, his eyes darkening with concern. "The nights have been brutal." Ioka met his gaze, a flicker of pain behind her steady eyes. "I was running from those who want to see my people broken, and from my own past." John listened silently, waiting for her to speak again. When she finally did, her voice was low and steady. "I left my village after the raids. My family, they didn't make it." The weight of her words hung heavy in the room. John felt a surge of sympathy and anger at a world that allowed such suffering. "I'm sorry," he said simply. She nodded, tears threatening to spill but held back with fierce determination. "I don't want pity. I want to survive." John handed her a cup of warm broth. "Then you'll find no pity here, only a chance." As the night deepened, they sat close to the fire, sharing stories and planning their next steps. Outside, the storm raged, but inside the cabin, two strangers forged a fragile alliance against the relentless cold and the harshness of the frontier. Days slipped into nights as the harsh winter gripped the land, blanketing the prairie in unyielding frost. Inside the cabin, John and Ioka found moments of warmth, but the wilderness beyond remained a constant threat. The snowdrifts grew taller, and the cold seeped deeper into their bones. John kept watch through the cabin's small window, ever vigilant for signs of danger, wild animals, wandering outlaws, or others who might pose a threat. The quiet between them was filled with unspoken fears and fragile hope. One morning, as pale light filtered through frosted panes, Ioka approached John with a tentative question. "Why did you take me in, a stranger, in this unforgiving land?" John paused, the question hanging between them like the mist outside. "Because no one deserves to face the cold alone," he replied. "Especially not someone who's already lost so much." Ioka's eyes softened. "I've learned to trust few, and fewer still with my heart." John looked at her steadily. "Trust is a risk, but it's the only thing that makes this life bearable." Their bond grew slowly through shared meals, stories of the past, and quiet moments beside the fire. Ioka taught John the ways of the land as she knew them. How to track the game, read the shifting winds, and find signs hidden beneath the snow. John shared his skills to the art of the rifle, the knowledge of the trails, and the wisdom earned from years spent on the frontier. Together, they faced the hardships of the season, relying on each other for strength and hope, but beyond the safety of the cabin, a shadow loomed. The men who had chased Ioka were closing in, relentless in their pursuit. The threat of violence was never far, and the fragile peace they'd found was on the edge of shattering. One cold evening, the distant howl of wolves echoed through the valley, a reminder that the wilderness was wild, dangerous, and unforgiving. John tightened his grip on his rifle. "We need to be ready." Ioka nodded, determination blazing in her eyes. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Outside, the snow swirled like a warning, and the frozen land held its breath for the storm to come. The days grew shorter, and the wind's howl became a constant reminder that winter was tightening its grip on the land. Each night, John and Ioka sat by the fire, sharing quiet moments that felt like fragile islands amid the storm outside. But beneath the warmth of the cabin walls, a growing unease simmered. John kept his rifle close, eyes sharp at every creak or snap in the frozen woods beyond. One evening, as twilight faded to darkness, a shadow slipped across the snow outside. John spotted the faint glow of a campfire on a distant ridge too close for comfort. "They're here," he murmured. Ioka's hands clenched. "The men who chased me, they never give up." John nodded. "We need a plan." Together, they reinforced the cabin's defenses, setting traps along the paths and preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The night before the attackers were due to arrive, they sat in silence, the firelight flickering over their determined faces. "I'm not afraid," Ioka said quietly. "Not when you're here." John reached for her hand, their fingers intertwining. "We'll get through this." As darkness wrapped around the cabin like a shroud, they steeled themselves for the battle ahead, knowing that their survival depended not just on weapons or wit, but on the bond they had forged in the heart of the frozen wilderness. Outside, the cold pressed in, and the storm waited. The moon hung low and cold over the snowy plains, casting a pale light across the frozen earth. Inside the cabin, John and Ioka waited with bated breath, the tension thick as the wind howled outside. Suddenly, the silence shattered. The sharp crack of rifles and the pounding of hooves echoed through the night. The attackers had arrived. John moved swiftly, firing into the darkness, each shot deliberate and steady. Ioka, nimble and fierce, defended their small refuge with arrows and determination, her eyes blazing with the fire of survival. The battle was brutal but brief. Snow stained red with blood, and the attackers, caught off guard by the pair's resolve, soon fled into the night. Breathing heavily, John turned to Ioka. "You fought like a warrior." She gave a tired smile. "I've had to be." In the quiet aftermath, as the wind whispered through the trees, they tended to wounds both physical and unseen. The fight had changed them, binding their fates tighter than ever. John looked out across the frozen land. "The world out there is cruel, but here, with you, I feel something worth fighting for." Ioka met his gaze, hope shimmering beneath her weariness. "We've found more than shelter. We've found each other." As the first light of dawn broke through the storm clouds, the cold seemed less biting, and the future, though uncertain, held a promise of warmth and belonging. The frost clung stubbornly to the trees, but the sun rose bright and steady, casting golden light over the snow-blanketed land. Inside the cabin, John and Ioka sat close by the hearth, the warmth a gentle contrast to the chill outside. The battle had left its mark, scars both seen and unseen, but it had also forged something stronger, a partnership born of hardship, trust, and courage. Ioka looked at John, her eyes reflecting the flames. "I never thought I'd find a place like this, or someone like you." John smiled, his rough hands brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. "Neither did I, but maybe that's what makes it real." Outside, the prairie stretched endless and wild, a reminder of the challenges ahead, but for the first time in a long time, the future felt less like a threat and more like a promise. Together, they stepped outside into the crisp morning air, ready to face whatever came next. The cold still whispered its warnings, but inside their hearts, a fire burned bright. And so, beneath the vast western sky, two souls found warmth, hope, and a home in each other.